Okay, welcome back to biology, everybody. Today we are looking at how to control the glucose levels, the sugar levels in our blood. So our remember task for today links back to our previous lesson. I just want you to tell me what the three internal conditions are which are maintained by homeostasis. So you're going to need to pause the video, spend about 5 minutes on this, shouldn't take you too long, and then come back for the answers. Okay, welcome back. So the three internal conditions which are maintained by homeostasis are the following. We've got body temperature, we have our body water levels, and we have our blood glucose levels. And it's that third one we are looking at today. So let's first look at what glucose actually is. It's a type of sugar which is used by the body to provide energy. So sometimes there's too much glucose in our blood and sometimes there's not enough. So what exactly affects the amount of glucose in our blood? Eating, for example, can cause your blood glucose levels to rise, especially if you're eating sugary things. And exercise causes you to use the glucose, so it causes your levels of glucose to go down. Okay, so why is it important to maintain glucose levels in our blood? So glucose is used as an energy source, and it actually allows our cells to respire. Our cells use it to produce energy. The energy is then used for our body's metabolic reactions and also for our physical reactions. And too much or too little glucose in our blood can actually cause problems with our cells' respiration. So it's really important that the level is maintained. Okay, so we've got a graph here which shows the amount of blood glucose in a person's blood normally, which is the yellow one, after a meal and then after some vigorous exercise. I just want you to have a look at this graph, and I want you to try and make as many conclusions as you can about the blood glucose levels and how it changes at different parts of the day. So pause the video here, take about 5 minutes, jot down as many things as you can, then come back and we'll analyze it together. Okay, welcome back. Let's see what we can come up with here. Okay, so if you have a look at the yellow bar, we can see that normally this person's blood glucose levels is around 90 milligrams per 100 centimeter cubed of blood. The blood glucose is then risen to 130 after eating a meal. So from this first two bars, we can conclude that eating causes the blood glucose levels to rise. The glucose in the blood then drops down to 60 after vigorous exercise, and we can determine by that bar that exercise causes our blood glucose levels to decrease. So you can see from just a very simple bar chart the amount of information we can actually get from them. And being able to read graphs as well is a really important skill that's going to help you in your exams in the future, because a lot of questions will be asking you to interpret data from either a table or a bar graph or a line graph, etc. Okay, press on. Okay, so these are some keywords, and I've chosen these three to isolate and to go through because they all sound very similar and they are all used in the maintenance of our blood glucose levels. So the first one is the actual glucose. It's a simple sugar. It's used for respiration, provides energy for our bodies. After that, we have got something called glucagon, which this is a hormone which causes the liver to release the glucose, which is stored as something called glycogen, when our levels drop too low. And then we've got glycogen, which is a storage molecule for glucose, and this is found in the liver. So I'm going to need you to write these three keywords down because they're very important to remember for today's lesson. So pause the video, spend a few minutes, and then come back. Okay, so let's have a look at what actually is going on when our glucose levels gets too high. So we can start down here. Too much glucose is in the blood. This causes the pancreas to produce a hormone called insulin, which is then entered into our blood. The insulin allows glucose to be absorbed by the body cells, and the body cells that we're looking at are going to be inside the liver. The liver is going to store all this excess glucose that's in our blood as glycogen inside the liver. that is then going to cause the blood glucose in the body to be reduced, and it is now at a normal level again. So it's gone from being too high to too low to normal levels. Let's have a look at what happens if there's not enough glucose in our bodies. So the insulin is not going to be produced by the pancreas. Pancreas is not going to produce anything, and so less glucose in general is going to be absorbed by the body cells inside the liver. The liver actually releases glucose stored in glycogen back into the bloodstream. If it's so low, the liver can actually, all of the glucose that is stored when our levels were too high, it can then re-release back into our blood, which causes our glucose levels to return to normal levels. Okay, this is just a very quick slide just going over glucagon in a bit more detail. So glucagon is a hormone which is released by the pancreas, and this hormone stops the blood glucose from dropping dangerously low. The target organ for this hormone is the liver, and it actually stimulates the release of glycogen to glucose. So when our blood sugar levels are too low, pancreas will produce glucagon, and it will cause the liver to release the stored glucose back into the bloodstream. Okay, now this is a quick table on the effects that low glucose and high glucose has on our pancreas, our liver, and our overall glucose level. So if you've got low glucose, the pancreas is going to secrete insulin, is not going to secrete insulin into the blood, and the liver is not going to convert glucose into glycogen. And the overall effect on blood glucose is going to increase. What the liver does actually do, though, is it converts glycogen back into glucose and pumps that back into our blood if our glucose levels are too low. If you've got high glucose, then the pancreas is then going to secrete insulin, which is going to cause the liver to start converting all the excess glucose into glycogen and storing it. And that then causes our glucose levels to decrease in our blood. Okay, so we've got some tasks. This one we looked at earlier in the lesson, so you can go back in the PowerPoint if you need to. Why is it so important to control the level of glucose in our blood? So it's 3 marks, just take about 3 to 5 minutes. Pause the video and then come back for the answer. Okay, welcome back. Let's have a look at the answer to this. So glucose is needed for cellular respiration. That's our first point. It releases energy for our body's metabolic reactions. You get a second point for that. And then too much or too little glucose in the blood is going to cause problems with our cellular respiration. So these 3 are the main reasons why it's so important for us to be able to maintain our glucose levels in our blood. Okay, and then we have a graph for you to have a look at. This graph shows the change in glucose concentration in the blood of a person with type 1 diabetes. So using the graph, I would like you to state what time the person ate lunch. So read the information that graph is giving you and the information that we've looked at earlier in the lesson. What time did this person eat lunch? Secondly, I would like you to name the hormone the person injects, which causes the blood glucose concentration to decrease. We have looked at this hormone earlier in the lesson. And it will also require you to know a little bit about diabetes, but I'm sure you can answer this question quite easily. And then our last question, I need you to explain the decrease in blood glucose concentration after this hormone was injected. So why did the glucose concentration go down after the hormone named in the previous question was injected? Okay, so in total you'll get about 4 marks for this. So spend about 4 to 6 minutes and then come back for the answers. Pause the video, have a go, and come back. Okay, welcome back. Let's go for the answers to this. So what time did the person eat lunch? It was 1 p.m. And this mark scheme allows you to have any mark between 12:30 and 1:10. So if you've got any answer between those 2 times, you are correct. Well done. The hormone that a person with diabetes would inject is called insulin. Now, diabetes is a condition where your pancreas stops producing insulin, or it doesn't produce enough. So people who have diabetes need to inject it themselves. And then number 3, let me just explain the decrease in blood glucose. So why did the level of glucose drop after insulin was injected? So insulin causes the liver to start storing excess glucose and into glycogen. So glucose is moved from the blood into the liver or the muscle cells. That gives you 1 point. And then to be stored as glycogen, it also gives you another point. So it's really important to remember those key words and to use them when you're giving your answers, especially in exam questions. Okay, that brings us to the end of this lesson. I hope you have a good week. If you need any help with any of this, feel free to drop me a message, or you can email me and I will respond as soon as possible. So I hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you